everyone. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to come join us. Hopefully we'll give you some information that makes it worthwhile. This is certainly a very current category. Speech recognition is starting to show up in lots of places, which we like because we've had the application speech enabled for quite a number of years, and it really helps as the acceptance gets wider in the market for us to position our solutions. So we're going to talk about speech as a technology a little bit, but mostly we're going to talk about the solutions that we offer. So if you're out in today's world at all, you're certainly coming across speech rec technology. We'll talk a little bit about where you're likely to see it. Now it becomes more important, I think, to start to understand why it's being deployed. There's a lot of reasons out there, and certainly productivity gains are the area that we focus on the most, and that's what we'll talk about in terms of what we can do with our speech interface that makes the product just more efficient than if you're using a normal telephone DTMF button type interface. And of course that translates to cost savings, which is why a lot of people look at doing this. The productivity gains, you have to be able to map them very closely to something that people can feel comfortable. If they're going to put the cash out to buy this, they want to know where that cash is coming back in, because that's how companies are run today. There's a reduction in transaction latency that's kind of a side gain that we'll talk about. No one's going to buy it just for that, but it is definitely an advantage in terms of better customer service, more reaction to issues. It's something that we'll discuss, and I think you'll also see as a value. And then we'll talk about how you can deploy it, whether it's a full deployment for the world coming into your business on the front, or if it's just maybe something to extend hours, or even an internal-only deployment. There's a lot of ways to use this technology to gain the benefits from it. So certainly out in the world, you're coming across this kind of technology today. Self-service applications on the web are very powerful, and now they're trying to kind of do that same thing on telephones. So if you call into a call center, airlines or banks, places like that, there's a pretty good chance there'll be some amount of self-service through speech. Might just be, asking who you are, what you want. Might be just navigation with speech, but it also could be a complete application. And the airline I use, I can actually call in and say my airline member number and ask for its flight status and speak the number of the flight I'm interested in, and it'll go get that information and read it back to me. It's probably faster that way. The staffing is not as much of an issue, so that's been a popular speech kind of application for quite a number of years. The big deployment now, of course, is on the mobile devices, and Apple Siri got the lion's share, I think, of the publicity out there when they released it. They did some great commercials. It's a great app. A lot of people use it. Android and Windows Mobile both have the same equivalent types of applications, and I see people, even out in public, sitting somewhere, talking to their phone using one of those types of apps for navigation. And then desktop applications have been around for a while, both dictation and the non-visual desktop access, the handicapped access feature. And both of those are popular, which means a lot of money has gone in to increase the quality of the speech recognition engines. That's their big contribution, was to fund a lot of work. And if you go back 10 years, the quality of speech recognition today is so much better. 10 years ago, you would have had a bleeding-edge application. While there were things it could do, it was very difficult to have that be your public-facing portal because it just really didn't work quite well enough. But today, as we look at what we're offering today, I think you'll see the quality of the speech recognition has gone up, and the understanding of how to deploy, how to create a speech application has gained as well. So let's sort of take a look at why we're talking about speech. We feel pretty comfortable being the one to talk about this because we've been doing it for a long time. Our speech applications have been in the market for over 15 years. That makes us a market leader in unified communication speech by lots of years. There's no speech product that's anywhere near that robust in terms of how long it's been on the market. We don't build the recognition engine itself. We license that from Nuance, the recognized leader for server-based speech recognition. They're the industry leader, bar none, partially because they've built the best engine and also partially because they've bought everyone else in the industry. So one way or another, if you're going to do speech, text-to-speech, translations, any of those, you're probably going to be dealing with a Nuance engine. We then took that engine, and once we put it on the platform for one application, we realized we can make a lot of applications. all take advantage of that engine. That Nuance engine just runs right on our product. There's no separate speech server. There's no real requirement other than to license the recognition resources, and we're ready to go. And as of our last version, it's multilingual capable. So we can actually have multiple languages, multiple recognition language engines installed on a single customer system to support the multilingual callers that a lot of customers have. If you look at where we deploy this, there's really three areas that we'll talk about today. The automated attendant, the outside caller interface, and the full user interface. Now, some of this probably needs a little bit of explanation. The automated attendant is the front end that you could answer your system for. If you were to call AVST, you will hear, welcome to AVST, please say the first and last name or the department name you're trying to reach. And that's a speech automated attendant. There's also other options, like for sales, you can say sales, for technical support, say technical support. All of those that's a true front end. The outside caller interface kicks in later when a caller decides to transfer to somebody. In most systems, even on Speech Automated Attendant, once you transfer to someone, then you're back to DTMF. If they don't answer, it's going to have you press keys to record and things like that. But we also, as an option, we offer the ability for that to be speech rec as well. The reason we do that is if you're in your car and you call this number with your headset, your Bluetooth headset, and you get a speech front end and you say somebody's name, if what it asks you for after that are DTMF keys, that's kind of a problem from a safety point of view. So we've extended our automated attendant to include that. And then, of course, we have the user interface that's fully speech-enabled as well. We'll look briefly at what all these do, kind of talk about how we've deployed them, and the options you would have and how they would fit in your enterprise. The first one we'll look at is Speech Automated Attendant. That's probably the one that for the last 10 years has been the most popular. And it's probably the most popular because it's easy to see the value solution here. If you can take some or all of the load off of your attendants during the day, they can be repurposed for other duties, and it costs a lot less to have an automated, 8 automated ports doing that is a lot less expensive than 8 operators sitting there. And the technology's come to a point where it works extremely well. The recognition engine, the way these things are designed, a lot of people are comfortable with a full front-end speech automated attendant. But keep in mind, we also have customers who say no. When someone calls our company during business hours, we want it to be answered by a live receptionist and handled accordingly. But even in those enterprises, we talk to them and they say, it's interesting, up to 40% of our calls to our attendants are internal calls, where people internally are calling because they don't know somebody's phone number. So just offloading that portion, a lot of customers are comfortable doing that, even if they're not going to do the front end. And that's a simple thing to do. Publish an internal directory number. You pick up your phone, call in, say John Tyler, and it's going to transfer to John Tyler. And then the second piece is even those people that want a full live front end sometimes see the value of after hours, where there won't be an attendant, enabling a speech automated attendant for some level of functionality as well. So you have a lot of choices in terms of how you deploy it, and that, of course, depends on your business, your calling public, and what you're comfortable with. If you look at how this works, it's fairly simple. When you call in, our prompts are built into the system. You record your own prompts in most cases, and you tell the caller what their options are, and then the caller speaks, name in this case, and we go ahead and do the transfer. So let's listen to kind of what that sounds like real quick.
At any time during this greeting, you can simply say the name of the person or the department you want to reach. For a list of departments, please say options.
John Tyler.
Who's calling, please?
Mark Reed.
One moment, please.
So that's a very typical automated attendance session. We have call screening turned on. In this case, that's why the system prompted for the caller's name. And now what's going to happen is our system's got a very great call routing engine, the most powerful out there in terms of we have more capabilities for making sure that call goes through than anyone else does. That includes things like we'll know if John Tyler's in a meeting from reading his calendar. We'll know if John Tyler is out of the building by reading the app on the mobile phone. We'll basically know what device John wants us to try that call on, and our chances of completing the call are great. And if we do complete the call when John answers, he's going to hear, you have a call from Mark Reed. And then we're going to provide John with a set of options for how he handles that call. He can accept it. He can play a message back to the caller. He can send it to voicemail, etc. all of this is done on the same ports that do voicemail and all the rest of the functionality. So it's a very easy process to deploy. And then underneath this, there are all the things that you need to make sure you get when you look at a system like this. John Tyler is a nice, easy name, and I'm not going to have any problem with that. But even with his name, he could be John Tyler, he could be Jonathan Tyler, he could be Dr. Jonathan Tyler, or he could be Dr. Tyler. So the ability to have alias names is very important. And that's something you want to look at any system that you're looking at doing. And we have unlimited alias names for people. And John Tyler wouldn't need very many, but you know there are other names that, from the way they look on that business card and the way people are going to try and pronounce them, there might be a little work there to make sure that your call completion rate is very, very high. That's one of the things we strive for. So if you look at our Speech Automated Attendant, it does some things that other people doesn't do. All of our features are integrated into this one platform, so that gives us some capabilities that go beyond what other people have. In terms of the directory, every user can be set to be in it or not in it, depending on how you want to expose various people out to the public. Like I say, we have alias names. We also have disambiguation. You could have 3 John Tylers in your enterprise. And we have a setup such that if that happens, the system will reply with something like, do you mean John Tyler in operations, John Tyler in sales, or John Tyler in accounting? So that disambiguation can be custom tuned to make sure, once again, it's easy to use and that the call completion rate is very high. We have local directories as well. Quite often our system is installed at a large enterprise spanning multiple sites and cities. So that way, if somebody calls and hits the call server element that is in Chicago, that directory can only recognize the Chicago name. That's going to make it more accurate, quicker, etc. So all of that piece can be handled. And then, of course, departmental transfers is something very easy to set up. And the departmental names have aliases as well. So imagine putting in accounting, if you want to transfer to accounting, and then adding accounts payable, accounts receivable, collections, and billing, because those are the things people might say when asked for a department name. The synchronization of this for the basic system is sort of automatic when you create users, they're in the directory, etc. But for some of the standalone Speech Automated Attendant systems, you want to synchronize with another directory, and we have an API that lets us do that. So we can take that information off a human resources system, out of LDAP, out of your email system, etc., and keep that directory synchronized. It isn't just names that work. All the commands in our menus, like if you want to have an announcement that has directions to your facility, you can basically say the first and last name of the person you wish to reach, or directions, to hear directions to our facilities. So everything can be speech enabled. Now that caller called in, and they asked for John, and they didn't get him in this case. So John didn't answer, which is, that means John's decided not to take the call, or he's off somewhere else. And we're going to keep that speech recognition application going. So in this case, it went out, it ran John, and then it came back. And we'll listen to kind of what that section or session sounds like for the caller.
Who's calling, please?
Mark Reed.
One moment, please.
Music as we try Mark Reed, or John Tyler's phone number.
John Tyler is not available. Please say, locate, leave a message, try another person, or operator.
So in this case, John's got most of his options enabled. These can be limited depending on what you really want to offer people. The fact that we offered locate means John has more than one number in his call list. So we could have just rung his desk, and his call list could be such that during business hours, when he's in the office, we ring his desk first, and then we offer the caller to ring his mobile phone. We also could do that automatically, so it's really up to how we program the system. And now the person can also choose to leave a message, or they can try another person. If besides John Tyler, I'm working with someone else, I can now say that person's name, or I can say operator and go have somebody find John for me. So it isn't just a simple say the name, blind transfer out, and we're done with the caller. We maintain control of that call to make sure that the experience is as helpful as possible and as intuitive as possible. So from the outside caller point of view, the Speech Automated Attendant, we have a very powerful operating. And once again, because it's on our core platform, we'll see a little later, it ties in with everything else we do. Most of our competition will have a separate application sometimes running on a separate server, sometimes on the same server, but it'll basically be speak the name, blind transfer out, and that application is done. That's just not the way we do it. Our integration makes it capable of offering a lot more in the way of functionality. The other half of the speech world really is the user interface. And this is the half that's newer, and it's newer because, frankly, it required better speech recognition than the earlier just speech directory types that we're capable of doing. So now, as a user, I can set up, once I have speech recognition resources on the CXE, I can set up a user so that every time they call into the system, they'll only use speech commands. They can use DTMF, but everything will be available to them with speech commands, and very simple, intuitive speech commands. And if you look at this, what we can do in a mailbox is all of the message management. So get new messages from Mark Reed, get new voice messages, get new fax messages, get new email messages, get read messages, all those kind of things you'd say to be able to process your message list fully speech enabled. And beyond messaging, call handling. I can be in my mailbox and listen to a message from one of my coworkers, and I can, their message is saying, we're going to need to schedule a meeting this afternoon to talk about this customer, and right while I'm listening to the message, I can say, call back. Since I know whose that message is from, if it's from a contact or from anyone where I captured the A&I number, that means I can simply write that in there, have the system make an outgoing call, and connect me. And now I'll talk to my coworker, and I'll say, what is it you want to do? Okay, how about 2 o'clock? I'll invite you, and I'll invite John Tyler as well. Is that okay? Thank you. He hangs up. I'm still in the system. Now I'll use the calendar access. Create a new meeting today at 2:30 for 2 hours. It'll come back and say, record a subject for the meeting, and I'll say, meeting to discuss the problem customer. And then it'll come back and say, who do you want to invite? And I'll say the name of a coworker or the name of someone in my contacts, an external person. Those will be added to the meeting. Those meeting requests will go out. That meeting will be on my calendar. So it's a very interactive process, very similar to what you can do sitting at your desk with all your computers. Now you can do over the phone interface. And the contacts access piece is very, very powerful because I can now sync my contacts with this system. And that means things like I can call anyone in my contacts by just saying call their name. If they have multiple numbers, it'll prompt me which number, mobile or business. I can forward a message I'm listening to. Let's say I'm listening to a voicemail message, and I know that one of my contacts is involved in this. I can forward it. Who do you want to forward it to? And I can say Mark Reed. And because I have Mark Reed's email address in the contact, he'll actually get an email with that voicemail as an attachment. So all of the functionality that I can do with system users gets expanded because I can also do that with contacts. And that makes it a much more powerful system, really increases the value of the system. And then all the mailbox management pieces, changing my greetings, my scheduling, changing my availability, turning on Do Not Disturb. All those things can be done with voice commands. Very, very powerful tool. For mobile workers, this is probably the most productivity you can add to their lives in terms of turning all that non-productive drive time into much more productive time. So here's kind of what a session would sound like.
What would you like to do?
Get new messages.
1 moment, please. You have 3 unread messages. Message number 1, an email message from Mark Reed. Message subject, the Martin Project. Message body, hi John, we need to talk about the Martin Project. Call me as soon as you can.
So when you say get new messages, you'll get voicemail messages, email messages, and maybe fax messages if you're set up for that. I choose an email message here because a lot of people want to hear the text-to-speech voice to hear if it's usable, which, of course, you hear it's perfectly usable. So get new messages from a specific person, get new email messages. All those commands will let you focus down and get what you're trying to get accomplished, get done right away. It's a very, very powerful tool. Now, besides message management, when we looked at that, we talked about call control. So here's an example. I'm driving into work in the morning, and I've logged into my system already. I'm triaging my email, and I'm being productive, and I get a phone call. The system, since this is one application, the incoming Speech Automated Attendant knows I'm in the system, and rather than blind transfer out to some telephone, it's actually going to tell me I have a call and let me take that call.
You have a call from Mark Reed. Please say accept call, reject call, acknowledge, transfer call, or review call.
Acknowledge.
Please record a brief acknowledgement.
Hi, Mark. I'm in a meeting, and we'll call you back when I get out in about an hour. So those choices let me manage calls much more effectively than just take the call or send it to voicemail. In this case, I want Mark to know that I got his message and that I'll be getting back to him, so I left him an acknowledgement message. And Mark would then hear, Neil Butler was unable to take your call but left you this brief message, and it'll actually play my acknowledgement to them. There's also silent acknowledgement. If I'm sitting in a meeting, the Speech Automated Attendant can actually pop up a little window on my phone through the data channel saying I have a call, and I can hit a button. And that button will automatically cause the system to play a canned acknowledgement like, Neil Butler was unable to take your call, we'll call you back in 15 minutes or tomorrow or ASAP, whatever button I press. So the integrated nature of the system is what makes it so powerful. From a calendar point of view, there's a lot of things we can do. I'm not one for making new calendar entries over the phone that much. We have a lot of people, particularly our salespeople, who live on the road, who love this feature. I'm more of a read my calendar guy. So I will climb in my car every morning on the way to work. One of the first things I'll do is read my calendar, see what I have going on for the day.
What would you like to do?
Get my appointments for today.
One moment, please. You have one appointment on Tuesday, July 9th. Appointment number 1 is a meeting scheduled by Alan Thomas, starting on Tuesday, July 9th at 2 p.m. for 30 minutes. Subject: software update discussion.
So if I had multiple meetings, it would then offer to go through and play all of my meetings. Very, very handy in terms of, for me, for kind of getting a handle on my schedule. Very similar to what you do when you come to work and you boot up your computer and the first thing you do is look through your email and then look at your calendar. You can now do that on the drive-in in that theme of more productive work. And then the last piece we look at is contacts access. Now this screen is probably not the best example. I have never, in the use of the system for the past 20 years, called in to read a contact. But it kind of gives you an idea of the information that's available.
What would you like to do?
Get contact info.
Please say the name of the contact for which you want any additional information.
Mark Reed.
Get contact information for Mark Reed. Which number or item? Please say one of the following: business, mobile, email address.
Email address.
Email address is markreed@telman.com.
Now, in truth, I'm much more likely to use my contact in other ways. Call a contact, forward a message to a contact, invite a contact to a meeting, or even use the contact record to match the ANI number of an incoming call so that when I get a message, it will actually say who that message is from. So the contact synchronization is automatic, and even if I had a brand new contact in the office and then go climb in my car and I'm headed out to meet that customer and I realize, I want to call that customer, I can say update contacts, and it'll go add anything new that I've added in the last 12 hours and bring it into the system. The strength of our product comes from the fact that we've been doing it for 15 years. I doubt we did it perfectly correct the first time, but customers were really good about saying, this would work a little better if, or this would be more useful if, and 15 years of solving those problems make for a much better solution than all the new solutions that are on the market from our competitors. So if you look at the things we do with our interface, we've covered most of these: create new meetings and appointments, invite contact as well as usage of those, call, forward, and send messages, your settings. What this means is you probably will never have to use the DTMF interface over the phone ever. And that makes it an incredibly powerful tool, easy to use, and particularly if you're transitioning from an older system, a legacy system, the users won't have to learn new keystrokes. Now, we emulate most legacy system keystrokes, so if you're coming from an Octel, an ARIA, Meridian Mail, any of those, we can create your mailbox such that DTMF keys will be the same. But it's still very, very powerful to move to the speech interface. We can record calls. So if I have a call coming in, I can say accept and record. Or for an outgoing call, I can say call and record. Those calls will be recorded and put in my mailbox as a message. I can put a call on hold. So if somebody calls me and says, listen, Do you have time for a meeting on Thursday afternoon? I say, hold on a second. I'll say, CX hold call, come back, and I'll say, get my meetings for Thursday. I'll listen to my meetings. When it's done, I'll say, get held call, and I'll go back and I'll talk to that person. I also use call holds very frequently in drive-through windows. Because when I'm out and about mobile, and if I'm in my mailbox listening to messages and suddenly I'm at the drive-through window, it's very confusing if you try and talk to both ladies at once. So I will put the call on hold, place my order, and then go back and finish my messaging session. One of the strengths in the way we do this is something called total hands-free connection. And what that means is when I call into the system, I can do everything and not lose my connection. And that includes making outgoing calls. So while I'm in the system listening to messages, I can go ahead and call a user or a contact, have a conversation with them. When they hang up, I'm right back in my mailbox again. And that means, particularly from a safety point of view, when I log into my car when I get going, that's one login, and I'm safely logged in and able to perform business for the entire duration of the drive. A lot of this functionality comes from our architecture. Now, one of the great things about being so early in this industry and unified messaging and call processing in general, and from starting with an open system from day one, is we've never had to sunset a technology. We've just been improving it for the last 30 years. So we ended up, we're the only ones out there that every feature we talk about, this webinar and every webinar we have, every feature we talk about, we can come out with one server under our arm and one DVD and install every single feature we have. It's one application. It's just a very powerful one. And that integration advantage becomes obvious when you look at some of the ways our competition does this. A lot of our competition, you can buy their voicemail, their call processing system, and they'll have a speech server. On some of them, it'll literally be a separate physical server. On some of them, it's just a separate application. But in every case, when you call in and you say somebody's name, they're going to blind transfer that call out of the speech server to the user. They don't really know about the user. They don't know if they're in their mailbox. They don't know any of those. So all these features that we do really aren't going to, you're not going to see them on these other systems. Our system is going to be easier, more intuitive, and it's going to give you more productivity gains because it knows what's going on in the user's life when the caller attempts to find them. So if you look at the way we do it, because we're a single application, we can do any kind of transfer, including things like if somebody calls in and asks for you and we ring you on your mobile phone, if you don't answer, that won't go to your mobile phone voicemail. We'll pull that call back and put that message in your regular business voicemail. That the system integration is a very powerful component, and it's what lets us do all of those features. So when somebody calls in, we'll know if you're logged in already. We'll give you that call tone in your ear to let you take the call. We'll know you're at home based on the location of the mobile client on your mobile phone. We'll know you're in a meeting. We'll know you're at your desk based on your presence from Link. This system just can do so many more things than any other system can do. And it does them by the virtue of the fact that it's integrated. Every application is running on one platform. Every application is coming out of a single database. If you take the speech piece, the mobile client piece, and all of it and tie it together, you end up with what we jokingly call the perfect unified communications user's day. And this is a very typical day for all of us, I think, at my company and a lot of our customers. In my case, I actually support the East Coast and Europe quite frequently, so it's not unusual at 4 o'clock in the morning that I'm up in my lab at home doing a webinar. I don't really want to take calls, regular calls during that time. Happy to be up to do the webinar, but I'm not really in business generally. So first thing I have a time of day set up. I have working hours. My working hours say if somebody calls me between the hours of 5:30 in the morning, which is when I head into work, and 7 at night, I'm perfectly happy to take those calls. After that, it just goes to voicemail, although I can override that. And so let's say I finish my 4 o'clock webinar at 4:30, and now I'm not going to be getting calls, but as soon as I climb in my car and drive out of my driveway, that puts me in work mode. And the system knows that by virtue of the fact that my mobile client is programmed to recognize when I'm at home. As a user, I went in and connected it up and read the cell tower information and my Wi-Fi, and it knows when I'm at home, so it can process calls in a specific way when I'm at home. So when I leave home and it's within those working hours, it now is going to send the calls to my mobile phone. And callers call in, and I'll answer the call on the system and let them stay located, and it'll ring me on my mobile phone. I'm probably already on the phone listening to messages, as I said, but that's okay. I'll get the tone in my ear and be able to take that call. I walk into the office. As soon as I'm in the office, it knows Once again, my mobile client has been programmed to recognize work as a location. So connected to the Wi-Fi, connected to the cell towers, and mapped it out. And now I have rules that say, when I'm in work, ring my desk. If I don't answer, ring my mobile phone. Sometime during the day I go into a meeting, it knows because it can read my calendar. And I've set this up such that in my case, it'll say, Neil Butler's in a meeting and we'll be back at whatever time the meeting ends. You don't have to have that much information. I just give that out. I want the customer to have a good idea when I'm going to call them back. Now, while most people would send their call to voicemail on their meeting, because I have the mobile client, I actually send the calls to my data channel on my mobile phone, and I get a little pop-up, and I'll see something that says, Mark Reed is on the phone, because he's in my contacts, so I'll recognize it from the A&I number. And then I'll have choices. I can take the call, step out in the hall, acknowledge the call by recording a message like I did from the phone interface, or I can use the silent acknowledge feature, which will bring up this screen, and then I can press a button and go on with the meeting, and I can do this quietly. So you now have the ability, when needed, to monitor voicemail, incoming calls, while you're in a meeting like most of us do messages. We all know there are times when we really have to be connected, and this lets you do that on the phone side as well as the email side. I come out of my meeting, system knows that, go back to my desk. Sometime during the day, I head out to lunch. These pictures obviously aren't me, if any of you know me, and I don't eat in places like that. My lunch will probably take place in a drive-thru. So when I'm at lunch, I'm perfectly happy to take calls. Remember, even if I'm in the drive-thru, I have that consult and hold feature, which will let me do that without it being a problem. I come back in the office. Once again, the system knows that from my mobile client location. And in this case, I get hijacked in the hallway for those hallway meetings that we all get involved in. I don't make it back to my desk. The system actually knows I'm in the building, but it also knows I didn't make it back to my desk because my IM client tells it I haven't touched my mouse or keyboard in an hour and 15 minutes. Hallway meetings, we all have them. Sometimes they're very valuable. I'm not going to walk away from them, but I'm actually set up so that the system will play a slightly different greeting. It will say, I'm in the office but away from the phone, and then I have it go ahead and try my mobile phone. I'll get that same pop-up, and I can decide whether that incoming call is more or less important than the hallway meeting that I'm in. But it's too busy at work, so I'm going to go home and work the afternoon out of my lab at home. I climb in my car. As soon as I walk out of my business building, sends my calls to my mobile phone. It knows that I'm not at work, I'm not at home, therefore I'm in that other state. In that other state, I'm programmed to use my mobile phone. I walk back into my house. Now it's during business hours in the afternoon. Mobile phone knows I just walked into my house. Calls come in, and in my case, they're sent to my Link client. I use my Link client from home just because it's easier. I don't have a regular phone there. So all of this, really two main things happen here. First, as a user, I didn't have to do anything. That's the most important thing about these features. You don't have to worry about buying this and not having your users take advantage of it. Once it's programmed, everything's automatic. No user involvement. Now, users can override it. There are times, if a 2-hour meeting got off, in a half an hour, you probably want to override that when you go back to your desk so you can get calls. So, there is user control, but it's completely automatic. And secondly, it gave much better information to the callers than the system you have today. This is a much friendlier system. Not only is it much more likely to connect calls with the speech front end, but it's also going to find the right device based on all of these call routing codes. So from our point of view, this integrated functionality delivers the most powerful user tool for productivity and responding to customers that's available on the market today. We call this feature set Atom, the AVST Total Office Manager, and it's a license on our system for users. Obviously, not everyone needs all of these features, so we take it to the point where you figure out how many licenses you need and you equip the system accordingly. Atom basically is the ultimate unified communications tool. It starts with a speech recognition and a messaging engine, and on top of that, we have location services. We have cloud access from all the different clients. We have the mobile location piece. We can read your calendar and your presence. We use your contacts in your calendar. There's no system that offers this level of integration except for ours. And most of our customers who've deployed this will tell you it goes in easy, it gets trained easy, and as I said, it gets used because it's something that's built into the system. It doesn't require the users to do things all day long, to change things, or even to remember on a day-by-day basis. I don't even record a personal greeting anymore because the system builds a much better greeting on the fly, and I've I know from experience, if I record one with anything in it that's time sensitive, I'll forget to record a new one. So this system actually makes me look more professional as well. And now we come to that time where we're happy to take some questions.
Okay, great. Thanks, Neil. We do have several questions coming in here. So just as a reminder, if you have a question you haven't already submitted, you can do that if your webinar screen, it may be minimized, the console, use the orange arrow key in the upper right corner if you can't find your question pane. First questions. Okay, so can you comment on the role of automated attendants as consumers use smartphones and click-to-call apps?
Yeah, so there's a bunch of pieces to automated attendant that are social in the sense of the first main one, of course, is do people want to use automated attendant? And it's kind of a question of how you're going to deploy your telephony infrastructure. But from a outside person calling you point of view, there's a couple of things to keep in mind. Yeah, if you were to look at Ann's business card and my business card, you would find we have the same phone number. So we start with kind of a single number reach concept. For the maximum use of our system, we funnel all calls into our system because now all of that intelligence is there. So if somebody's out and they're in their car and they're doing that thing that, of course, none of us do, which is holding their mobile phone slightly below their window level so the police can't see it and making a call, one of the great things about our system is once they call in, they won't ever have to hit any more DTMF keys. They can do all the transferring, ask for the departments, escape out, leave a message, try another person, get to the operator. All of that on a speech-enabled side makes it a much better kind of application. There's also still the issue every now and then of dial pads when you don't know somebody's name and the system asks you to spell their name. I remember early on working for this company, this was a lot of years ago, and going over on my first international trip, and sitting in the hotel in London and calling into our system and needing to talk to somebody and going to dial their name and looking down at the dial pad only to see there were no letters on it. A metropolitan dial pad has letters on it, and there's plenty of places in the world where you're not going to see that, and mobile phones are one of them. A lot of mobile phones now have like second-generation dial pads that they've added that in. So the speech recognition makes it easier for people. As long as they have a connection and they can speak, they're pretty much going to be able to navigate our system.
So Jordan has not.
Thanks, Neil. I remember when I had a BlackBerry, that was an issue. There's no letters on those tiny keys.
Yep.
Okay, next question. So, and you kind of just addressed this a little bit, but again with the auto attendant. So what about difficult to pronounce names with the speech auto attendant?
Yeah, I mean, there is no doubt that as you look at deploying one of these systems, you have to ask some questions internally of yourself and your staff. I'm going to tell you, a full front-end speech automated attendant is not the ideal solution for every single company. It depends. Now, if you're a company where you've taken a look at it and you're pretty comfortable with that, you will still have things to do to make names work better. I always talk about one of the people here that I've worked with for a lot of years, and his name is Jeff Sligatis. And we used to laugh in the early days because our system records failed attempts so we can see what's happening. And we used to just laugh when people would see Jeff's name on a business card and try and pronounce it. And it took us a couple of weeks to get every version of what people said from that card into an alias name. His is an exception. But you will look, and part of if you were using our professional services or our dealers, we're implementing this. One of the first things we'd say is print out a directory and let's sit down and go through it. So how many of these people have honorifics, like doctor? How many of these people are also known by their nicknames, like Andrew and Andy? And then there'll be some names that you'll just look at them and say, yeah, we're going to have to start with 3 or 4 phonetic-sounding alternates in there. So we can map to just about any name. It's just a matter of making sure we do that before the system rolls out so that the experience is a smooth one.
Okay, great. Again, an auto attendant question. So what happens if the system doesn't understand the caller or the caller says nothing?
In both cases, there are fail-safe timeout options. If it doesn't understand the caller, the system gets programmed, and you say, so how many times do you want to give them a chance to say it? And you also can say, based on what we thought we heard them say, we're 70% sure that we know what they said. Do you want to prompt them by having confirm it? Somebody calls in and says, please say the first and last name of the person you want to reach. Neil Butler. The system goes, I think that's Neil Butler. So what I'll say is, do you mean Neil Butler? And then that's one of the ways we handle those. But if it's 40%, they're going to say, I'm sorry, I didn't understand. Please say that again. And it'll cycle through a number of times, and that's programmable as we set up the system. And then at some point in time, there's what's a speech rec timeout. It says, okay, what would you like to do with this call? Now it's up to you. You can play an announcement of some sort. You can transfer to an operator. You can give them a simple menu with DTMF commands to get somewhere. We can map it to whatever you think the correct solution is. And that's, once again, part of that setting up the system correctly that comes with years and years of experience putting it in.
Okay, thanks, Neil. Next question. Does AVST integrate into Google Calendar in the same way as it does with Lync?
So we integrate to Google Calendar. It's slightly different. Our Google application uses one of their APIs called OAuth, and OAuth gives us some capabilities, but not quite as much. If you had Office 365 or Exchange, then you could read your calendar, you could create new appointments. With Gmail, their API doesn't support creating new appointments that way, so you can read your calendar, no problem, but you can't create new appointments over the phone.
Okay, great. Okay, so do you support speech-to-text conversions, or maybe that's sorry. Do you support speech-to-text conversions for visual retrieval?
Yes. We use, once again, that Nuance name keeps popping up. We use a Nuance service bureau called Phone Tag. So, and you would buy this and get a provision from us. You don't deal with Nuance at all. But the way it works is, as an administrator, I can set up your mailbox such that whenever you get a voice message, we send it to Nuance. Nuance transcribes it into text and puts it into your email directly. You get the text translation up to 3 minutes of the message. If it's longer than that, you'll have to listen to the message. And you also get an attachment from the message. There's 3 levels of transcription. The least expensive is fully automatic, and it'll give you a good idea what the message is, but it won't be as accurate as the second level, which is automatic, plus it's tuned. In other words, when the Nuance engine does this and it has an area where confidence is low, it breaks out a little 6 or 7 second segment, and it actually has human transcription. People tune that up, and then it assembles a message. And then the third level is fully human transcribed, the more expensive and the most accurate.
Okay, next question. So this is actually from a customer. We have a CX with speech interface and Octel ARIA emulation. And it says, when you're in speech, the verbiage needs to be specific and the Octel commands are not usable. So I guess she's asking if the Octel commands translate to speech. And has this been addressed is the question.
So, and the issue here is, in the speech interface, there are some DTMF keys you can use. They were really there in the early days kind of as a fallback. And the reason they're there is you will get in circumstances where the background noise, like at an airport right under the speakers or something like that, is so loud that speech just isn't going to work. So you then can press a key and drop back to the DTMF interface. At that point, your Octel interface is in play and fully functional. So if you're programmed for the Octel interface, once you hit the DTMF keys to drop out of that, you will be in the Octel. But the keystrokes that are in the speech interface, we don't make a set of those for every different, I think we have 9 emulations we do now. So we don't map them that way. We really look at, if you need to use DTMF keys, then drop out, and you will get into that Octel interface, and you'll have the keys that you know and love.
Okay, so it looks like that wraps up the questions that we had in queue. So I'll just thank everyone again for joining and also for participating in the Q&A. Neil, do you want to wrap us up?
Yeah, just as you did, I really want to thank people. I know it's difficult to carve time out of your day to do this. Hopefully you find it valuable, and you'll let us know. Let us know if we're giving you stuff you want. You want them more in-depth or quicker, different subjects, because we're only doing this so that you'll come and listen. So we need to make sure we're putting the stuff out there you want to hear. So thank you.